Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome to the future of Star Wars.
I hope not, but it does seem like it's here.
It's a bright tomorrow, isn't it, Kyle? I use the word bright particularly considering the first episode.
It was pitch white for most of it, actually. Blinding, even, actually.
So this is Season 2 of Star Wars Visions, and the thing is, I actually at least partially enjoyed Season 1 of Visions, because it had some episodes there with some actually pretty damn good ideas. And it even had some touching upon some interesting concepts, like what would a mostly peaceful occupation of a world by the Imperium look like? Or Empire, more correctly. Like, what were the Jedi doing? Like, were there resistance movements? Were there people, like, mining their own kyber crystals, etc., trying to start a Jedi resistance? Were there other people trying to rebuild the Order, and so on and so on? And it never really went too hard. Oh, sometimes it did. Some of those episodes, the childish one in particular, were awful, but...
Yeah.
It was,
one.
It had more hits than misses, in my opinion. But this, I don't... Okay, there's one episode in Season 2 that I sorta liked. Everything else I am at best ambivalent towards, and most of the time I actively hate it.
Yes. It across the board just really doesn't capture the setting at all. And sort of just manages to waste it. It feels more like an art project than anything else, rather than anything to do with Star Wars whatsoever.
And the first season of Visions had a little bit of that problem as well, but it was still far more original. Whereas, okay, moving on to the first episode. First and foremost, it is all in this weird, blotted, colory, CGI style, which I'm supposed... I think it looks awful. Like, I think it actually genuinely looks awful. Particularly due to the contrast of the main model. She has this glossy, low-resolution, early, 2010 CGI skin, combined with this overly striped, colored vomit
pastel
on...
texture.
Yeah, like vomit on canvas style of everything else.
Yeah, and it's clearly trying to be like, oh, check out these cool colors and like these cool scenes and how we use color. And watching this episode to myself, I was thinking to myself, like, what does this have to do with Star Wars? Like, it just felt weird. It's like, oh, the colors and the color and the vibrancy and all these weird textures. Like, it just didn't really feel like it belonged.
Well, it doesn't, because, okay, so, the next story here is, our main character has brain damage, and so she views the entire world as a retarded Picasso painting. At least that's my headcanon explanation. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Sith. She used to be a Sith, you see, but now she's no longer a Sith. How did she turn into not a Sith? But anyways, her master shows up and goes like, woman, back in the kitchen. And no! And they fight, and she kills him. And then she's like, oh, I know. The light and the dark coexist. There cannot be light without the dark. Yep.
The biggest thinkies. Oh, in order for light, there must be dark. And then she activates the other part of her lightsaber, which is the dark side of her lightsaber.
It is the most basic bitch thing you can ever imagine. Like, look, for there to be light, there must be darkness. Like, oh, save me. But the worst part is, that is, of course, not how Star Wars works. Because in Star Wars, it is a very classical good versus evil story. In Star Wars...
Yin and yang, yep.
Yeah, in Star Wars, the darkness is supposed to be evil. It's not even as yin and yang, to be fair. George Lucas has changed his explanation on this about as many times as I've changed socks in my entire life. But the dark side is evil. It is not a necessary force in the universe. You could argue that maybe the Sith Empire, with its order, was a decent, sorta, kind of neutral-ish. But even then, it was at best, oppressive. Whereas the pure, unadulterated dark side of the Force is destructive. Like, the Sith Empire was them bridling the dark side of the Force and tuning it and using it rather than succumbing to it.
Yep, trying to harness the power of it rather than to be destroyed and consumed by it.
Yes, but that still means that it is a force of destruction, which means that it is not the mere opposite of the light in that they coexist. It is it's anti-life. It is anti-matter. It is the thing that destroys.
Yep, and they've made that pretty consistent throughout the setting, which is weird because Disney throughout this show or the episodes seems to be pushing the idea that it isn't this anymore.
Yes.
That we're going to a different direction. It's like, oh, the light and dark must exist together. It's like that's not quite the idea of what Star Wars was going for, but okay, we're just gonna switch gears in the middle of this.
Yes, because that is very much so the new plot line being pushed by these episodes. The light and dark must coexist, and that the dark is not merely evil. But the problem is, that is an interesting idea, and they somewhat experimented it in the season 1 of Visions, like the one with the furry little bunny thing, for example, where the Imperium showed up on a planet, and it helped the planet in many ways. It was a shitty feudal system, and they brought technology and all kinds of stuff to it, to the point where the population was divided as to whether or not the Imperium was good or evil. And if they were continuing with that, I would say, okay, but they don't. In fact, the 2 last episodes are such a brilliant example of how they drop the ball on this completely, because this is Disney failing to understand the most basic philosophical quandary in human history. Light and darkness must coexist, meaning that there is no absolute evil and there is no absolute good, and that is why, of course, Disney gives us absolute evil and absolute good in the 2 first episodes with no distinction. But we're gonna save that, so you gotta watch the whole video, okay? Otherwise, somebody will come to your house.
Yep, we gotta get through the whole thing.
We have to, so you must.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, episode 1, not very interesting. Boring, basic, rich philosophical quandary, which isn't even in canon, and the art style makes my eyes bleed.
I agree with that one. It was a pain to look at.
Episode 2 is a short, sadly, reprieve from the art style. And okay, this one I like a little bit better. So we start out with child labor, which I am a huge proponent for, to get those lazy bitches out of bed.
Get to work. Waste of manpower.
Yeah, the Imperium feeds you, houses you, clothes you. Work, bitches, work.
And so it starts off with child labor, straight off the bat too.
But then the ungrateful little shits elect to escape from their benevolent Imperial overlords and waffle off into the wilderness, where one of them begins beating himself to death against a tree trunk for no apparent reason beyond, haha, look at him, isn't he fucking retarded?
Boom, boom. Yep, and he's like, ha ha. They also talk about like, oh, there's like a cave, and the cave, like it's so forced, like because they only have like 20 minutes to talk about it, or 15 minutes, and it's like there's a cave, and there's said to be a thing in the cave. We're going to the cave. It's like okay. Okay.
Yes, and it turns out there is a thing in the cave. There's a creepy thing in the cave.
The creepy, screamy person that has been twisted and basically made. I don't know what you'd call that, like blind? Almost like Banshee-like.
Well, I kind of liked the visuals a little bit, because it was a nice and scary episode, which I enjoy for my children's entertainment, because if the child isn't crying at the end, you've done something wrong.
Yep, there's somebody in that cave who's been in there for far too long, and warped and twisted by the dark side to such a degree that they are no longer capable of rational thought. They lash out and try to attack the children.
Yes, or I've got a better idea.
What?
Because you can see when the light shines in there for a second, you can see what looks like a camp. So this person has been living in here for quite some time. Why would a person who is some sort of dark wielder, she has a red saber, which means evil now, according to Disney law, choose to live in this tiny refuge-filled chamber? And if you look closely, too, you can see stuff like a small, tough, stuffed bunny in the corner, like a toy.
Oh.
So
you think that this was a child just like her?
I think this was the failed or escaped apprentice of the Sith that shows up later, who was trying to hide from her.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of a cool idea. But yeah, so she's been living and hiding in this cave, but she's kind of twisted by madness because she just shrieks when she sees the children.
Yes, because she's afraid. Like, the entire world is against her. She feels haunted and hunted, and she's desperately hiding from this abusive master who has done God only knows what horrible things. And when she sees the children, she doesn't see them as children. They're agents of her mistress, because they are.
Yep, because as it turns out, they're being directed by the former master all along.
Yes. There are even carvings on the walls, which seem to tell a little bit of a story, which looks like she was... They're not very detailed, but it seems as if she maybe was cast out or rebelled against her mistress and lost, and now she's hiding. See, that's cool. I like that. And a part of me likes that they didn't explain it too much either, because it lends an air of mystery to what was going on there. But the clearly evil chick shows up.
Yes.
At the end.
It's uncanny too. It's like, yeah, you're evil. Eyes glowing that sickly Sith yellow, you know, red, pale, pasty, uncanny.
Yep. Who offers to take the young girl along with her to the stars because she has completed her trial. So God only knows how many children she's essentially fed to her previous apprentice.
Yep, in order to figure out which one is worthy.
See, that is some
It's
nice,
a dark tale.
awful darkness, and I quite like it. I'm saddened by the fact it was very short. It wasn't very well told, and it came across as very rushed as well. But it was a nice little gut punch of horror at the end there, so I didn't hate this one. But I'm also not particularly like. I'm more positive than hateful of this one.
Yep, because even when she abandons her companions, what's interesting is they look at her with betrayal.
Yes.
And the eldest male shakes his head like, no, that's wrong.
Which is also kind of an issue because, like, they have no reason. This was the part where they laid it on a little bit too thick. Because,
too heavy.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to be thinking that this chick is outright evil, and yet her childhood companions are like, oh my god, that's clearly Satan, what's wrong with you?
She's like, I'm pretty fucked up. Follow me into my very weird, uncanny ship with my weird, uncanny face, staring weirdly and uncanny at you and smiling in this very horrifying manner.
Yep.
Yeah, they laid it a little too thick there.
Then our eyes are yet further punished by...
Oh god, no.
Some sort of halfway there pretend claymation CGI thing?
That one was painful. This one I didn't like. It had a low, awful frame rate. It felt like claymation, but it didn't feel like it proper. And it's literally Welcome to Space Africa.
Well, okay, so we've got a couple of red people here. The red people lived on the planet, which was rich in natural resources, and then the Empire came and was like, can we have some? And they were like, no. The Empire took some anyways. And then the natives attacked the Empire, unprovoked.
Yep, they tried to start a war.
Yes, they were terrorists, and they attacked the Imperial facilities, so the Empire defended itself. And then the last two survivors of this entire species, apparently...
Yep, because everyone went to go fight them, straight up.
Yep, now overthrow the rest of the Empire, basically. Like, the story is dumb. It's like oh god. It's one of the most forced Disney stories too. As at the end, the oceans are poison. They put some water in. Oceans are fine now. And Kyle was sitting there, and let's just say, like, there is no way this planet will recover in time. And whilst he's saying this, before he even finishes the sentence, the planet has fully recovered. The mushrooms are bright and glowing again. The water is clean, and they're looking up at the stars as the sky parts. They're like, we're not alone anymore. There are all people in the skies.
our souls are in the heavens. God, it really triggered the crap out of me because I'm like, all right, so they're the big contention here in the story is like they don't have any water, and the two sisters are struggling to stay alive, right? And it's like they go to the Imperial facility to steal the water so they can survive or whatever, right? Fair enough. And they destroy the facility with the pure water, and the pure water crashes into the corrupted, tainted, sludge-infested, toxic water, and magically it cures the planet. Like, what? That's not how that works. That would be toxic. All that would be toxic.
Yes.
The smog-covered skies from like years of pollution just part. The plants that have been dead for years just bloom to life, and the world turns green. It was the very essence of Disney in every essence of the word.
It was awful, and the exact opposite of the previous episode. See, the previous episode had a nice little gut punch of horror. It was a fairly adult and dark story, which is the only one, I think, in the entire show, whereas this is the most ridiculous, the heroes never die, everybody comes back to life, garbled garbage imaginable. It's one of those goddamn children's movies where the character clearly dies, he's dead as a doornail, and then a miracle happens, and it's like, oh look, the dog's back alive again. Whoop, 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 whoop.
It's like, oh, it was just a fake out. Don't worry, guys. It's happy story.
Yeah, episode 3 was just garbage. Absolute, genuine, unadulterated garbage, and I hated it a tremendous deal.
It was trash.
Episode 4 was,
Oh no, not that one.
It was funny.
Something.
It was funny at the very least.
It was funny, but not because of what it was trying to do. It was funny, Baldo.
Episode 4 is an episode that just takes the piss out of Star Wars. It is just taking an enormous dump on the entire setting. So you got a little droid, and it's supposed to be like an astromech unit, except then she pulls on a cord, and suddenly it's like, oh, never mind. I'm actually a dog mech, you see. Woof, woof.
It's a slinky as well, by the way.
Yes. And the story, too, is the most fucking embarrassingly basic. Because you've got the mother character, and she's incredibly cringe, and the daughter's like, Mom, you're incredibly cringe. But then her mother comes like, let's win the race, incredibly cringe daughter. Like, yes, incredibly cringe mother. And then they win the race, because the race is super important.
Yep, and there's some haughty girl who's like like, oh, I'm better than you, and it's all about, the whole message is you should love your parents no matter what. It's just Disney. It's very Disney. It's
terrible, because the entire thing is like, oh, your mother's cringe, but you shouldn't yell at your mother for being cringe, because she does actually love you. Like, okay, Disney, okay.
Like, is this a Star Wars show? Like, what are we doing here?
Yes, is this a Star Wars show? And the answer is no. See, the worst part is I actually kind of enjoyed this one because it was so thoroughly stupid. It was so thoroughly taking the piss out of Star Wars. There's a point where they're like going like, red 1, red 2, red leader. And it's like, it hurts the soul. And yet you almost have to appreciate it for taking the source material so incredibly unseriously.
It's like, we didn't want to make a Star Wars story. In fact, we just want the money. That's what it felt like.
It's like, for somebody like myself who has always viewed Star Wars as a bit of a cringe thing, okay? This is my soul animal in so many ways.
Disgusting. Abomination. You're just like the cringe mom with her eggplant face.
Episode 5 is the first one that has an actual good art style that didn't want me to poke my goddamn eyes out the moment I saw it, which was a nice thing almost. Yeah, I was like, oh, it's a moment of peace.
Yeah, like, it's actually a decent art style. And pretty good animation.
Yeah, you got a little anime. You've got a little hot chick who's like, look, I have long hair that I tuck underneath my stupid little hammock thing, and it just disappears, okay? It's just how
magic.
Yes. And she has this plan. So she was raised on a planet where there are rocks. And they pick up the rocks, and they look at the rocks, and the rocks are like, right, so this is like a prophecy or something. And they write down the prophecies, and that's all they do. And the old guy is like, little woman, we just do this. There is no reason why. There's no point in this. This is just what we do. Generation after generations of us backwater savages read the futures in stones, okay? Don't ask questions.
Yep, they write it down and they don't interfere. Like, we know the future. But she's like, what about the Jedi, the Sith fighting the war? And he's like, shut the fuck up, woman. Write down the story.
Yep.
Okay.
But our female anime protagonist, she doesn't want to be just a useless little woman looking at rocks and going like, it kind of like looks like two dudes and like a thing and they're kind of maybe fighting. I don't know, because it's literally just it's just shadows on a rock, Grandpa. Like, I can't read this.
Yep, it's just like, I don't know, sludge. Like, what do you want from me, dude? Like, write down the story of it. Okay.
So she goes off to win the war single-handedly by blowing up a statue. Because you see, there are two statues, and the statues are the light side and the dark side. And she's joined together on this mystical, magical adventure by a little white-haired Shotakun, who is like, hello, we're gonna be in a very antagonistic relationship until the last scene where we're like, you know, I quite like you. Yeah, me too. Shall we be friends?
And that is an accurate assessment of what happens, too.
Yes. But, shock and tragedy. When they arrive at the statues and they're ready to commit their vandalism, they realize that the statues are both the good side and the bad side at the same time. Well, wow, that means that blowing them up isn't going to end the entire war, Kib. How weird.
It means that nothing matters, and so that we have to learn to accept ourselves for who we are, the good and the bad.
The problem with that, because here's the issue. That's a nice message, but then you've also got long-haired emo-kun here with his goddamn red lightsaber, who murdered white-headed child's entire family in front of him, then scarred him, and then he's now like, hello, child, I've come to indoctrinate you into fascism.
Basically, like, straight up, that is the entire arc of it. He's like, I've killed your master, and I'm going to turn you into a little war criminal too.
That's the problem. This show is like, oh, there's no difference between the two sides, and this guy is like, I'm going to turn you into a mass-murdering genocidal child soldier for shits and giggles. I am equal to the good side.
And the show's like, but they're the same. And it's like, but show, like, you do know that you just contradicted yourself right here. The show's like, what?
Like, see, that's the problem. Because if both sides are supposed to be similar and equal and valid in different ways, then you need to show them. You've got to show me why I shouldn't think that Mr. War Criminal, with the literal snake for a weapon, isn't just pure Satan.
Because the show does a great job of making him look like he is just evil and he deserves to die.
Exactly. Like, he's strangling a child to death with his long pee-pee snake arm thing here, and the show is like, but he probably has a pretty good reason. Like, okay, sure, what's the good reason?
He's like, you know, he's just trying to talk to him about killing more children. It's like, the light side and dark side are the same. Trying hard.
It's such a half-formed idea, right? Like, they have this idea that light and dark needs to have balance, fair enough, but they don't understand what that actually means, and so they can't actually go through with it. Yep.
The thing is, if you want to try to explore the Force and try to build on it, you're going to have to actually think it through, because half-thought-through ideas is how we got the stupid midi-chlorian bullcrap that happened in Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Like, you need to think it through. Because if it's supposed to have an element of mysticism and, like religiousness to it, like, you can't just be like, I don't know, like, they're the same, whatever, fuck off.
And there's the issue, too. The mysticism. They read the future in the rocks. Okay, that's some stupid garbage. Why, though? And then they go like, well, actually, it doesn't matter. At all.
It doesn't matter. Don't, like, we read the future of the rocks, but why? Because we do, and we write it down. Okay, but why? Are you going to change the future? No.
That's not mystical, Disney. That's just retarded.
Well, our society we've built giant statues dedicated to reading rocks, okay? This entire civilization is based on the idea of rock reading. Like, what the hell?
Then in the next episode, we get at least another brief moment of haha funny as we spot a massively overweight stormtrooper harassing a pair of civilians.
Yes, he's just like morbidly obese too. He's like just chunky.
It's like, bro, I'm really fat.
And the art style, well, it's not as offensive as some of the earlier ones in this. It's not good. The stormtroopers look terrible.
It's like
here.
hyper low detailed art style.
Like hey, let's be as lazy as we can. The only thing that looks somewhat decent is those alien chicks, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. So the stormtroopers go to a cabaret club, which is a fancy word for whorehouse with less touching, where we are introduced to our two main characters, sort of pseudo. One is just a waitress because she's not allowed to take part in the espionage operations, as they're actually spies for the rebel cause, you see. And the other is the madam of the place, who dances using drapes.
Yeah, that is that's the thing.
That's pretty much
Also,
the thing.
It's totally not the French Resistance, and they totally don't have French accents.
Oh yes, every one of them speaks with a French accent. Like it's basically
It's just a stereotype.
the people who made this was like, okay, but what if it wasn't Star Wars and instead it was like 1940s France? What about that?
Like, yeah, and like, it feels like we're honestly in that setting. Like, it's creatively bankrupt. This is the French Resistance. You know, these are French whores, and they're attempting to, you know, undermine the Reich.
Child. Jesus.
Whatever. You know what they do on the side. We're all thinking it, okay? The Empire don't just come for dancing. Let's be real here.
But they have a dance in public, and they're putting listening devices on people. You know, the classic listening devices. Big, flashing things that go beep, 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 which would
And
be
blink,
real hard
too.
to notice.
And as she's dancing, while everyone's watching her, right? All eyes are on her. She is the one that's flinging out these little beacons everywhere.
Yes. The beacons that bleep and blink.
There's absolutely no way she would have gotten away with any of that.
But anyways, they're doing a whole spying operations and everything's super complicated and this is super important. It'll change the tide of the entire war, you see. It's super duper important. But then, our main woman character sees a man in the crowd and she decides to burn it all to the ground, throw away every piece of information she has gained so far because of a woman moment.
Yep, a classical woman moment. Apparently, she thinks just because she looks at this guy's silhouette that he is the one who abducted her infant son. And so, she decides to screw over the entire operation by attempting to assassinate him because she thinks that maybe that silhouette could be the same guy.
Not even the silhouette. All she sees is his uniform, and his uniform is white, and she's like, well, that clenches it.
I'm gonna try to assassinate him. Alright, screw the operation. It's like, but this operation is giving the rebellion valuable intel. I don't care. My women feelings.
Screw the optics, I'm going in.
Going in dry.
But, shocker, it's not actually that guy at all, so she burned the entire operation to the ground for absolutely no reason. Instead, it's her son that was stolen from her whilst the Imperium genocided her people, except for her, and her child, and her rest of her family, and everybody
And
else on the planet,
civilization.
apparently.
That's just under Empire rule, and they didn't actually genocide anybody. Which is weird, because the way they portrayed is like, there's just an Empire dude, you know, she's crying on the ground, and he takes the baby and walks away, and like, there's fire everywhere. But from this, you can clearly see that the Empire is just occupying the world, and that's about it. They're still doing stuff, they're just under Empire rule.
It's silly.
I don't even know why did her son get abducted? We don't even know, just
No.
because.
Well, the dude probably had a fetish for their species, and so he's like, okay, I'm gonna bring one home and raise it as my son for reasons unknown.
I've always wanted a son that had blue and yellow eyes.
Yep, and horns and shit. Like, I don't know. I always had that feeling that was what I needed.
Oh, I mean, he got his wish, you know.
as it turns out that yes, indeed, this Imperial officer is her son. And she hugs him, and he's like, Mom, is that really you? But I don't understand. Who even cares? It's a standalone episode. It will never be wrapped up. It's pointless suspense. It is basically the studio just being like, Disney, we really enjoyed receiving millions of dollars for you for very little work. Could we have some more, please?
Yeah, we'll do the same low-effort quality and turn it into an entire show, just as disappointing as the Mandalorian.
It's substanceless, and it means that the payoff doesn't have any weight or value. It wasn't bad, in and of itself, it's just, it doesn't go anywhere, and so it's pointless.
Yeah, some somewhat decent animations, despite the fact that, like, the Stormtroopers themselves look boring. The motion, the girls are honestly the focus here, because the motion of the dancing is where it's at.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They've got some good dance moves. They're swirling their little capes around and stuff. That looks pretty good. But enough about the good, Kyle. You know what's coming up next.
Oh, God, please. It's just gonna go worse.
The episode that made me at least 30% more racist.
Honestly, I didn't have a problem with the Nation of India, but after this episode, I do have a lot of problems now, and I think it might be racist.
This was a truly god-awful episode, because, okay.
This is pain. This is pain.
We were watching the English language version, and most of them work pretty well in the English language. There's a couple that are clearly meant to be recorded in Japanese, but this one, they have hired what is either incredibly stereotypical Indian voice actors or people, because they put it on. It is full hobbity. And the music, oh god, the music. The music is vile. It is offensive. It hurts the ears. It is nothing but shrill, distracting, pointless, aggressive noises.
It is. And the worst part is the cinematography and the animations are not good here either. It is like, if you've ever seen any Bollywood, it is that, but Star Wars.
It's worse. Bollywood goes over the top in every way, but it has some class, some substance. This has none. The best part is when they introduce the Grinch as the villain.
The hair is just fucking green. He is just the Grinch. He's also Indian.
It was dreadful. And as throughout the entire episode, I was like, wow, all of this music is terrible. And then in the final fight, they put on yet more aggressively pointless noise, and then suddenly, in the background, you start hearing and you just sit there. Why?
It's pain. It's pain. I remember when we finished this episode, we're like, oh god, it's over. And then the credits music started playing, oh. It's a vile assault on my ears and everyone else's.
It was just terrible. And what is the payoff after all of this pain and suffering? It is that the brother has to give up his little sister so that she can become a child soldier for the Republic too. That's the payoff. That's the big, yay, happy ending.
Yep, it was not very good.
An abomination. An absolute, actual, genuine abomination.
It is. This episode, I think, is the most painful of the bunch. It's just pain. It's pain all the way through. The storytelling's pain. The characters are bad. The voice acting's terrible. The music is terrible.
And all the colors too are exactly like the music, overdone and aggressive.
Yep. And the old granny, oh my god, her face in this just looks is the most if you pause any scene where you look at her face, it is just pain.
She has a piece of nose armor.
Her face is pain to look at. Every time I see her face, I just want to cover that part of my monitor.
Nope, terrible. The next episode is the second to last, and this is, oh my god, this is exactly the opposite of what the first season managed to do with that episode of the furry bunny, where they introduced the Imperium as not a clearly malevolent force, but still one that was obviously divisive of society. In this one, the Stormtroopers march an incredibly diverse group of randos out into the middle of desert, and simply go, dig.
And then that's literally what happens.
Yeah.
That's literally 50% of this episode. They dig.
They dig.
Straight up dig. And that's it.
They straight up just dig. And they're digging for kyber crystals, apparently.
Yeah,
And
apparently.
they find some kyber crystals and they give them up to the Imperials, who are like, cool, dig more.
Yeah, and they keep digging.
And they keep
And
digging.
digging.
And they build an entire civilization around this strip mine. I shit you not. There is a time lapse where you see ass loads of heavy machinery and transports going back and forth to this dig site, day in and day out, day in and day out, and day and night and day and night and day and night and day and night. They have constructed an enormous gigacity next to this place. They had used none of the heavy machinery for digging, using only pickaxes.
Yep, only pickaxes. That is the workforce. They're literally just slaves doing pickaxing.
Yes.
Like they're picking away at the dirt, which builds a giant mega city off in the horizon.
It is the least effective way of digging imaginable. And then finally, they reach...
God damn it.
They reach dirt that is too hard to dig.
Yep.
And one of the stormtroopers just looks at his captain and goes like, "Sir, the dirt. They've reached the end of the dirt.
There's no more good dirt down there, just bad dirt now." It's like, okay.
It's just
And then
hard
they
dirt."
pack up, and then they just fucking leave them there. And then
Yes.
that's it.
It's brilliant. Okay, they free all of them by turning off their little magnicolor whatever thing, bobbidobs. And then they just walk away. They just leave.
Them in the hole, and they're just like looking up. The people like, see it.
And the people look up at the hole, which is now entirely impassable, of course, because I don't know why. I guess they just removed all of the ramps and ramparts that they were showing earlier, and they just leave. Like, why? Why did you just leave? Why didn't you make them? Why didn't you make them dig another hole? Like, why?
Yeah, it's a waste of a workforce.
Exactly. And then, what is the big story here? The big story is that one guy is like, no. See, I know that there's a city nearby. I can literally see it on the horizon. It's like 50 yards over that away. All we need to do is climb up here and tell those people that we're still in the hole. Because clearly they forgot or something.
We're stuck down here. Please help. And that is unironically what he does. He climbs out of the hole. Nobody's like, no, you should just give up. We should just live in the hole. There's no food or water down here, by the way. And everyone else is content to be like, yeah, let's give up and just live in the hole. Even though they'll starve to death.
Yep.
And this guy's like, you guys are dumb. I'm going to climb out of the hole. He climbs out of the hole. He goes to the city. And he's like, please help. We're in a hole. And people are like, no, they would never do that.
You forget. He struggles a bit first, but then, like, a dirt mouse or something comes along and goes like, hey, I'll, like, make handholds for you because, I like you, I guess?
Yeah, that was weird because that didn't go anywhere. Like, that, it's like there's just a mole and it digs holes for him and then it disappears and we never see it again.
Yes, but it was very nice of it to help him out like that, I guess.
I mean, it was a plot convenience, yeah.
But yeah, he goes to the city and he's like, listen, people, like, we're stuck in a hole. And at first they don't care because, like, dude, I'm busy. But he gets up on a stage and tells them that they're stuck in a hole, and then everyone's like, you're stuck in a hole? Jesus, that's awful.
Why? Why are you in the hole? Who put you there?
Who put you in the hole? Like, I know we live next to the hole. I know we can see the hole from where we live, but we didn't know there were dudes down there.
There are people in there? A whole civilization, in fact.
Like, why?
Right next door.
But
Oh, God.
he gets caught, and he gets zapped by a pair of stormtroopers who put their blasters on stun, which was very nice of them. You know, they didn't want to kill him or anything. They just shocked him a little bit. Although, this might not have been out of the kindness of their heart. These two stormtroopers might simply have just been the two biggest assholes in the entire galaxy, as they then pick him up and drag him all the way back to the hole again.
Yep, they do. They go take him on a speeder. They travel for hours. They then wait for him to wake up as one of them is holding him by the hands, the other guy's holding him as they're like as they're heaving him, and they wait till he wakes up. As he wakes up, he's like, no, no, and they like 1, a 2, a 3, and then back down he goes, and then he plummets to his death.
Yep. Like, hey, ho, and back in you go.
Back in you go, and he claps into the ground, and everyone's like, oh no, and the little girl's like, just follow the light, and everyone's just like, follow the light. Follow the light.
Oh god, yes.
Follow the light. And then people in the city all turn on the lights and walk out like, follow the light. And then they walk around the crater and they look down like, oh my god, there's people down there.
So, from God knows how far away, the people in the city, they hear them chant at the bottom of the hole. And our 2 asshole stormtroopers who are seeing this are like, sir, a bunch of civvies are coming out of their houses to look at the hole for some reason. What do we do?
He's like, stand in front of them and tell them to stop. I was like, okay.
And that's the most fun. Okay, so after hearing them, somehow, the stormtroopers show up and they form a firing line and they threaten them like, leave, civilians. You can't free the people in the hole for reasons.
We don't want them out of that hole. We think it's funny.
That is literally their motivation. Like, why don't you want them out? It's funny. Like, God damn it, we put them in there for a reason.
It's so I can look down on them. Makes me feel good about myself.
And the civvies just walk past them, and the stormtroopers, fully armed and ready to kill every last one of them if they so need, they look to their sergeant and go like, sir, what do we do? The unarmed civilians are gonna let our toys out of the hole.
He's like, yeah, whatever. Let's just go make a different hole with different people.
Literally,
and then they get up.
They do. They turn to their sergeant and go like, what do we do, sir? And the dude's just like, we'll just fuck off. We'll just leave. And they just
we'll go
leave.
make a different hole.
They just leave.
Yep, and so the Empire's ceded the world and it's independent now.
Like, I don't know if they did. I guess they just went back to the city again, and we're just because the hole itself, right? It's a big hole, but it's a big hole in an enormous area. Like, if this place has kyber crystals, surely you could make other holes.
Yeah, you would think so. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, the whole plot of this is like, we take a bunch of like prisoners out, we dig a hole, we leave them in the hole, we build a city from the hole that we dug.
Yep.
And then we leave them in the hole, and then they get out of the hole. But we don't want them to get out of the hole.
But we don't want them to not get out of the hole enough to stop people from putting them out of the hole.
Yeah, like, it's like, all right, we're not gonna kill you, but like, don't leave the hole.
So
Stay in there.
The civilians, of course, get them out of the hole. Like, there was a brief moment there where they backed off from the crater's edge, and I was sitting there like, please start throwing dirt down on them. Please stop throwing
Start
dirt
burying
down.
them. Like, they're like, no, they get buried alive.
They just start shoveling dirt down there like, this is an embarrassing secret. Shovel.
Our city can't be built on lies. I'd like to point out that also, they dig up the kyber crystal, which is, used for Jedi stuff, and it's also used for Project Stardust, I think is what it's called, which is the Death Star, right? But apparently they use the kyber crystal in this story to build the city.
Yes, they build the city with it, and they use it for windows because, goddammit.
Because the people in the hole are like, we built your city with the kyber crystal. I'm like, oh, that's so sad. I can't believe that we're living off of the slave labor that you guys were doing while our city was being built, that we could see you easily digging up the kyber crystals from afar. But we were totally naive about it.
And the worst thing at the end, because this is very much so a slave story, shall we say. And they end it all with a fucking piece of graffiti.
Yes, there's a random character who's got this bag on his back. For one of the reasons, one of the miners has a spray paint bag. I don't know why. He is just spray painting, and they show him spray painting stuff as the little black dude's climbing out of the home, and then at the end he's still spray painting. So he's been spray painting this whole time, just absolutely obsessed because he's autistic about his spray painting, and he had spray painted the black dude breaking his chains and getting a free. And there's a rock down there that's spray painted with graffiti.
Yes.
It's the most pointless story that they don't like. I don't even know what the heck this is.
It is so forced. Like, they dig a hole for reasons. They are left in the hole for reasons. The people save them from the hole for reasons, from the city that they built for reasons. The Stormtroopers stop them, but they can't actually bother to really stop them for reasons. And then the Stormtroopers just leave for reasons. And then the people get out of the hole and go where? We don't know. They're out of the hole now. And that's all we got, damn it.
Yep, that's the end of the story. They get out of the hole. Like, it can be summed up as people dig hole, people try to get out of hole, then people get out of hole. Yes. The end.
The only one who won here was the sand rat thing, who now has a piece of graffiti to look upon for the rest of his life. Like, wow.
And he's got a big hole to live in.
Yes.
He's got...
I will tell my grandchildren of the enormous hole the random humans dug.
Don't know why they dug it, but they did.
And to finish off the idiocy of the whole light versus dark nonsense, so Imperium, dig hole, mine kyber crystal, pure unadulterated evil for no other reason than to be pure unadulterated evil. When the Jedi make an entire civilization dig kyber crystals, it is honorable work and they do it for free.
We are very honored to dig kyber crystals for the Jedi. The follow-up episode is literally just taking the piss out of the previous episode.
Like, I'm pretty sure this was done, like, they had no idea what the other teams were working on, because it is the exact same situation, but in the inverse, and because it's for the Jedi, they do it happily. Like, they put on their little Nazi-style helms, and they
Which they do wear.
They do!
They're putting on their stall helms for the Republic. Like, honestly, all I'm getting out of this is I think the Republic might be a little fascist, honestly. I don't know what they're doing here.
It's so dumb. And again, the whole, like, oh, good and evil balance. No, Disney. You make pure good and pure evil. Stop even trying to pretend you have depth.
Yep. It was really bad.
But that's not the main point of the story. The main point of the story is that we are introduced to the ugliest little teddy bear I have ever seen.
Cat bear thing. They look at it like cats.
I don't know, cat bear thing. And she sings. Okay? And
that's it.
She sings. And all of the kyber crystals on the entire planet, the planet is apparently just made of kyber crystals, have all been corrupted by the Sith, who were like, okay, so, like, Sith sabers are made out of, like, kyber crystals that we've, like, domestically abused. And so they're red and, like angry and shit, and that's why they make that stupid, like, I barely work effects they do now.
Yeah.
And then they explode if you touch them.
Yep.
Except if you're a little girl and you go, in which case they all turn into good kyber crystals again.
Yep, she just sings to them, and they're like, oh, purified.
Yes. She purifies the entire planet in about a 5-second performance.
Yep. Instantly.
Yep.
The Jedi sees this and is like, oh, great. You're a Force user too, and good job on helping us with our war materials for our war efforts. All right, you're a child soldier now. Come with me.
Congratulations, you've been inscripted, little girl.
Like, what? You're gonna go die in some war on some planet you've never even fucking heard of.
And to further hammer home the fact that this entire species was enslaved by the Jedi to mine their kyber crystals, the dad even goes to the little girl going, you are the first of our kind to leave our planet for the stars. So these teddy bear things have been enslaved here for God knows how many millennia, mining kyber for the Jedi.
Yep. And hey, you know, because she had the Force, so she could prove useful as a child soldier. So, you know, the teddy bears served their function for the Republic.
Yep. Her father will continue to work hard in the salt mines forever and ever, and his daughter will become a shock trooper for Republican values. All in all, a pretty happy ending, frankly.
This is the good guy version, by the way. The other one was the bad guy, apparently.
Yeah,
despite them doing the exact same thing. Like, I don't know about you, but the creative bankruptcy here is just palpable.
Season 2 of Visions is just vastly inferior to the first one in every single regard. The only episode that I thought was actually like a little bit worthwhile of goodness was episode 2, because that was a nice dark horror-y twist ending. It was really actually quite terrifying in its own way. And I didn't hate 5, the more anime-esque one either. That one was okay if bland. The others were outright either meh, bad, or straight up offensive, like episode 7.
Goddamn episode 7. 7 will scar me with that music, that screaming. Oh.
This is Star Wars. Back to what it should be. Visions was a brief glimmer of, hey, you know, if you gave this to a bunch of really high-profile studios, they might be able to come up with something. And they elected to go, we can't allow our viewers to have hope. Let's give out the next bunch of seasons to a bunch of tiny-ass studios from Chile who are going to make slave labor teddy bears. And thus, everything comes to an end. Star Wars is still garbage, and you should still give up on it.
Sadness.